What's up, folks? It's your boy DT 2.0, and today we have a battle I think you'll be interested in. Now, it's my first official battle or versus, and even though I compared these two in my M17 review, this is them going head to head. The Alienware M17R4 and the Alienware M15R3. Now, I know what you're thinking. Now, I'm doing this in case you're deciding between two things: to get the 15-inch or the 17-inch display, and then whether to save money and get the R3 or the R4 version. Both of these versions carry the OLED display, and carry the 4K display, and I'll get into the differences during the review. Now, you know how I am. I'm never going to tell you what to buy, just what I would buy, or in this case, what I already purchased. So during this versus, instead of doing my normal loves, likes, dislikes, concerns, and recommendations, I'm going to go over 5 different things, right? The outside aesthetics, the inside components, the displays, and in this case, I have 4K on both, but the M15 is OLED. I'll say that again. The performance, and then last but not least, a conclusion. No recommendation on this one because I think you'll find that both of these laptops are great in their own right, depending on what you use them for. So it's a win-win situation with either. And I think I just let the cat out of the bag. Where the hell did they get that saying from anyway? It makes no sense. Anyway, let's get into it. Outside aesthetics. These two are twins, or at least two brothers in the same family that look like their dad or their uncle. They look exactly alike. From the color to the port selection, vents, the junk in the trunk. The M17 just extends a little bit more out the back end and of course out the sides because of the size of that screen. They are just about the same thickness though, with the M17 edging it out just a tad bit thicker, but it's nothing noticeable. So that's a good thing. I said in my review of the M17 that it was a missed opportunity for Dell to not include or to include something extra to make you want to splurge for the M17. Extra extra ports, better speakers, or whatever you can do outside of just adding a number pad, which was an obvious choice. But they went the easy route and just kept the laptops the same, just made them bigger versions of each other. It's just like the car companies do that make very minor tweaks year after year before a major upgrade. Other than that, it's the same outside. So I'm just wondering where Dell and Alienware is going to go after this design, because this is a great design. I'm just not going to lie to you. If you like flashy, if you like to show everybody what you got, this is the design, this is the computer to get. If you look at all of the other companies out there like MSI and Asus and Razer, for the most part, they stay pretty low key in the design. This one is like, boom, I got an Alienware. Look at the lighted head in the back. Look at the flashy colors. Look at all of this stuff. Where the other ones, the logos are not as bright, not as big, not as shiny, and somebody have to ask you what it is. So if you're getting an Alienware, you're buying it with a purpose. So that's it for the outside. Now on to the inside. Now there are a list of things that are different between the two, but yet they're both the same. To be honest with you. Now, Number one is the processor. Let's just get straight to that. One is the Intel i7 processor. Both are 10th gen. And I already said in my review of the M17, again, we could have went with the 11th gen, but I think they just rushed these things out to stuff those chips in there. That's my personal opinion. They may have other reasons, but that's my personal opinion. But both are 10th gen, but the M17 for some reason has the slower 10870 processor, and the M15R3 has the 10875 processor. Now, that's nothing to be alarmed about because they both are 8-core, and the only real difference I see when looking at the specs between the two is a 0.1 gigahertz speed difference, and that's advantage M15. But you'll see in the performance area that it's not a big deal. It's not a big deal at all. This is just me nitpicking. Now on to the next one is the RAM. 266 megahertz on the M15 and 2966 megahertz on the M17. So the RAM on the M17 is just a tad bit faster. Again, is that a big difference? We'll see in the performance area. Next. Now I have some folks that ask me all the time during my reviews, they'll put in the comments and ask about the fans. So I'm gonna tell you right now, fan noise doesn't bother me. And I said it before, my hearing is not great from being on Navy ships a long time, and fan noise is constant once you get to sea. For these two, they both get loud, and loud is a term that's is going to be different from you to me to everybody else. Now I say that because you may think it's loud, but I don't. When I crank these up in performance mode, they are both the same, but the M15's fans are just a slightly more high pitched. It doesn't bother me at all, and if you're gaming with headphones, you won't even notice. But at the end of the day, both are noticeable. So while I got them here, I'm going to let you hear the fans, and I'm not going to have a sound meter or anything like that. I'm just going to crank up. I'm going to open up Alienware Command Center or Control Center, and I'm going to crank them up, right? I'm going to put them in performance mode one by one and then let you hear the fans. So here I am. I'm changing it from this to performance. And this is the M17. Now, it probably sounds louder to you going through this mic than it does to me. But then again, I already say my hearing sucks. So take it with a grain of salt. Now I'm gonna turn it back to quiet mode, and I'm gonna turn on the M15. If you can't hear it, there's a slight whine in it, but it's not. Again, it's nothing to be alarmed about. I think the M17 sounds more like a when you're on an airplane and you're flying in the air on a commercial flight and you're flying in the air and you have that constant noise in the back. It's lower pitched. That's what I think about. That's my opinion of the M17. With the M15, it's like you're on a smaller plane and you're having that same sound. Back to quiet mode. And that's it for the fans. Next, battery life. And again, this is another thing that folks always ask me about that I really don't care about. Not to disrespect you guys as you guys as standards for laptops, but these things that really don't matter to me. But I'm going to go over them anyway, right? In case you're wondering, battery life would be better on the M15, obviously because it's smaller and it's less powerful. But also because of the OLED display. Now, I know everybody knows what OLED display does and how it works, but in case you don't, when the OLED screen is black, no power is applied to that individual pixel. And in this case, there's a whole bunch of black on there. It fades to gray in and out, so you really can't see, but when it's black, it's that portion of the screen is off, which in this case, no power is applied, which is less power consumed by the screen. For the M17, if it's on, the backlight is on. If you see colors, whether it's white or black, the backlight is on, in which, in this case, it's probably going to drain power faster. But again, y'all know my opinion. These are gaming laptops. This is not the Dell XPS where I'm doing a lot of word processing. If I open this thing up, it's for either gaming or crunching some numbers. That's it. So if I'm gaming, I'm not going to have it unplugged. And like I said in my M17 review, I am not going to take this thing to Starbucks, bust it open, and to knock out a game or two, or do an hour of gaming. Because if you do an hour of gaming, that's an hour that you're going to eat up all your battery, and then you're going to be without power until you get to your next stop. So that's my opinion on battery life. And last but not least, the differences in the two, which everybody knows between the R3s and the R4s this year, is the graphics cards. Right, the M15R3 has the RTX 2070 Super, and the M17R4 has the RTX 3070, which just hit the streets. Now, I'm gonna tell you what I just found out, that NVIDIA has tried to pull an okey doke on us with the naming convention of the 3070 chips. Even though I said in my review that, hey, the naming convention got simpler, there are no Max Q, when in fact there are Max Q versions out there. I watched another reviewer, and I can't remember the name, and if I do, I'll put it in the comments, but they were able to find out how to find out if the RTX 3070 you have is a Max Q. And I did it on this one. So, for example, I'll go here and I'll go to the NVIDIA control panel. And under help, system information, on this list right here, if it's a Max Q, you'll see it. It'll be on this list right here. So just be mindful of that when you're buying other laptops. And I think the laptop that they had that they were reviewing was one of the Razer computers that advertised as a 3070, but when they went into the settings, it said 3070 Max Q. So keep that in mind when you buy these. You're safe with the Dell Alienware, the M15 or in this case M17R4s, because this particular model is a full 3070. Now, whether the M15R4 is a 3070 Max Q, I don't know yet, right? And I say yet because I'm probably going to order one to make an even comparison between last year's M15R3 with the 2070 Super and then this year's M15R4 with the 3070, hopefully non-Max Q. All right. So if in this case, like I said before, fortunately, none of these, or not this one, is not Max Q. So I'll get one to confirm. I have confirmed on the GE66 that I had, with the 2021 version I had, that was also a full 3070, right? So I'll leave the differences about the graphics cards right where we are right now, because the real differences comes when we go to the performance area. But just know that the M15R3 has the 2070 Super and the M17R4 has a full RTX 3070. And that's it for the inside components. Now let's talk about what y'all want to hear about, and what a lot of people want to hear about, or one of two things, is the display. Display. Now, obviously, one is bigger than the other one. And I said in my review that the 4K on a 17-inch model is much more immersive than on a 15-inch. But that doesn't take away from the clarity and the sharpness of each. Both are great in their own right, but it just looks overall looks better on the M17 when it's colorful. And as you can see right now, at least what I'm seeing is you can see some deeper colors on the OLED display and not so deep. And that's mainly because of the light I have coming in through the window that's putting this sheen on my on my M17R4. So don't think that the display is dim like this. When I'm looking at them here live, yes, the colors are just about the same. Just this has just a tad bit more punch, and I think it's because of that one thing is because of that glossy display, and then obviously because it's an OLED, right? Viewing angles obviously goes to the OLED on the M15, whether you get the R3 or R4 4K versions. With the M17, in order to get the best colors, you have to be right in front of it, and in this case, that's not an issue because it's not a TV. So when will you never be directly in front of your laptop? So I'm just letting you guys know that, just in case you want to know. But the viewing angles are better on the M15R3 with the OLED. Now, the biggest difference is in the LCD and in the OLED, right? You don't have an OLED option on the M17, unfortunately. I don't know why that is. Only an LCD panel, but the OLED is 100% DCI-P3, and on the M17R4 is 100% Adobe RGB. And I'll tell you, with the obvious exception of the blacks on the OLED, they are color-wise, they look exactly the same. In fact, I'll say the LCD is a tad bit better when not black, because the brightness on the M17 maxes out at 500 nits, but on OLED, it's only 400 nits. Now, you wouldn't notice that unless they're sitting side by side, because they pretty much blow every other 1080p laptop out of the water in terms of brightness. And matter of fact, let me just pull up Google, just the home page, and maybe I can, blow my camera out real quick. As you can see, the brightness on that is pretty bright, and the window's probably making it look worse than what it is. And then that's Google on that. So I'll tell you what I see versus what the camera is recording, right? This is a little bit dimmer and it's cooler, where this is brighter but warmer. That's the only way I can explain it. If I didn't have them side by side, if I looked at one and then closed it and then looked at the other one, they'd look exactly the same to me. And I'm just being real with you. They look exactly the same. And I said before, the OLED has a glossy display, and in which, in my opinion, adds a level of, I don't know what to call it, let's call it finish when playing games or viewing animated CG graphic movies like Avatar or a Disney Pixar movie. I can't explain it, but the M15 just looks a tad bit better because of the glossy display. The characters and surroundings look more 3D-like. I just can't explain it. You just have to either believe me or get one yourself, but I'm telling you, you'll love it. So once you get one, you're not sending it back unless you just cannot contend with that 60 hertz display. Also, the reflections on the M15 is just as bad as if you had a TV in a bright lit room right by a window like I have right now, right? So sometimes I have to close my blinds here in order to get a good view of the TV, and you probably can see me in the camera on the TV right now. So you may want to take that into consideration when you're trying to place your desk to put the laptop on. But in conclusion, when you have them side by side, you can tell a difference if it's not a completely dark screen. But overall, it's a tough choice to choose which one is better. Everybody has their needs, right? Some people want DCI P3, somebody wants a Dolby RGB. Some people prefer the glossy display, other people prefer the matte display. Do you want it 400 nits or 500 nits? And the list goes on. Yes, the M17 is more immersive when you're playing games, but the M15 is just more 3D looking, and the colors look a tad, when I say a tad bit deeper, which makes it that much better when playing games. And only games, like when you're viewing like a movie or something, they both look exactly the same. But at the end of the day, both have vivid colors, but the M17 has whiter whites and brighter brights. Like I'm making a damn detergent commercial, right? Anyway, only other difference in the display is the response time, which on the M15 is 1 millisecond, and then on the M17 is 25 milliseconds. So that's pretty long. And I thought about it at first. I was like, well, does it really matter? So while I was playing games between the two, I didn't notice a real difference in looking at my game. But then again, I don't play fast-paced first-person shooters where I'm moving the camera all around. So whether it gets blurry or not, I didn't see it because I wasn't moving that fast. So what is response time? And I'm not here to get real technical. I'm only telling y'all because I'm excited that I found out exactly what it was, and I actually found a test that I can show you right now. But I'll read the definition, or my version of the definition that I looked up, right? It's the time that it takes for the color on your monitor to go from black to white and back to black again, and that's measured in milliseconds. And there's also a gray to gray version of that test. In this case, I'm gonna show you what I'm talking about with a test that I found online. So hopefully you can see it, but in case you can't, I'll tell you what I see. So I went to ezo.com for a monitor test, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna hit start test, and I'm gonna select response time, and I'm gonna select response time. Now I'll tell you what I see, right? Because you may or may not see it because I'm recording at 4K 60 right now. But I can tell you right now, this one is a little bit blurry as it moves across the screen, where this one, although not as blurry, it's a tad bit sharper. The trailing edge of the black box especially looks like it just fades out to the back, where on this one it fades out but is not nearly as long as that one. So that's the response time, right? It's those colors trying to shift as it moves across the screen, right? And I was pretty amazed while I was looking at this, because I can really tell that 25 milliseconds, even though in real life 25 milliseconds is short, but when you're moving fast like this or playing games, it can affect your viewing when you're playing fast-paced first-person shooters, right? I'm not a competitive gamer, so it doesn't matter to me, but it may matter to you. That's it for the display differences. Now on to the performance. Now let's get into the meaty portion of what most of you probably have been waiting for. And I kind of did already, but I did it again with some added tests. I already compared them in my review of the M17, but I went on ahead and also stress tested them using 3D Mark. In case you haven't seen my review, here's what I found. While playing Tomb Raider or Shadow of the Tomb Raider, overall and during the test, even during playing and running the benchmark, there was only roughly a 7 to 15 frames per second difference between the two. And I'm talking about the 2070 Super and then the 3070. But keep in mind, that's just one game. As I said before, I am now using 3D Mark to even the field and keep from downloading individual games to test. So in this case, I put both computers in performance modes and ran Time Spy Extreme, which is a 4K 3D test. And I only did that because I'm dealing with 4K displays. I ran Port Royal, which is a ray tracing test. We both have RTX chips in these. And I ran a Time Spy Extreme test. Try to say that 4 times. I'm glad I got it on this tape because it took me multiple times to get that out. But anyway, Time Spy Extreme stress tests, where I test the frame rate stability under a high load for each computer. And the way it does that is it just runs the Time Spy Extreme test 20 times or 20 or more times in a row. I just chose 20, which was the minimum. Well, 20 or more times in a row to test those frame rate stabilities at a high load. Now for this test, or for that test, it needs to score 97% to pass. Unlike in school where you can get by with a 75 or a 70, 3D Mark don't play that. You need 97% to pass. Sorry, don't take it personal because you don't get 97s. I'm only playing, or you need to go study. Let's see what I found. Comparable to what I found in my M17 review, the M15 scored a 3719, which amounted to a 80 plus frames per second in Battlefield 5 at 1440p. And for the M17, it was 5144, which amounted to 105 plus frames per second playing Battlefield 5 at 1440p. Now the real differences is in the CPU and GPU temperatures. And I'll put them up on the screen, right? CPU for the M15, 100 degrees. For the GPU, 78 degrees. For the CPU for the M17, 90 degrees, so it's 10 degrees less. And then for the GPU, a cool 60 degrees, which drops it 18% in reference to the M15. Moving on to Port Royal, the M15 scored a 5081, which amounted to an 85 frames per second, or plus frames per second for Battlefield 5. And the M17 scored a 6442, which amounted to 100 plus frames per second in Battlefield 5, and both at 1440p. But the CPU for the M15, 90 degrees, GPU, 75 degrees. For the M17, 65 degrees for CPU and GPU. Now, obviously, it probably runs cooler because it only runs a 2-minute test, maybe a 2-minute test one time. So, because we're talking 25 degrees and 10 degrees for CPU, GPU difference between the two, which was pretty big, right? So I mounted up and loaded up the Time Spy Extreme stress test, which put these jokers on notice, put them through the ringer to the test to see what's better. And what I found is the M15 scored a 92.9%. Now, again, in school, that's an A, maybe even an A plus, depending on where you're going. But for 3D Mark, it's a fail. CPU and GPU was tapping out, like literally tapping out at 90 to 100 degrees the entire time. So again, the stress test ran Time Spy Extreme 20 times for almost that entire 20 minutes, with the exception of it ramping up. The fans were going, screaming, and also those temps were high. So I'm pretty sure there was some throttling going on. But for the M17, 97.5%, which is barely a pass, but it's a pass. And CPU and GPU the entire time cruising at 75 degrees for each. Crazy, isn't it? So obviously M17 is way better, right? Or is it? In my opinion, and this just my opinion, the performance is comparable. More than enough for me. To me, the difference between 80 and 100 frames per second for games that I play is null and void. For you, it may matter. You're not going to be playing at that frame rate anyway with either displays, only if you connect these either to a TV or an external monitor. In this case, the advantage would be m17R4. Now, if you drop it down to 1080p, then both are boxing in the same ring for 12 rounds with a split decision at the end. I'm just going to be real with you, right? If you drop these things down to 1080p, and for anybody that asks, when you drop these to 1080p, no, it does not look blurry. They look just as crisp at 1080p, right? You can tell the resolution drops, but it looks just as good as if I had a 1080p laptop sitting here. But the biggest difference I think we found and we've seen and was proven is in the temps. Now, if you game for long hours with no cooling pad to help you out, M17 may last longer as the components generally stay cool. The heat or high heat applied to anything in life will break down, from that cheap ass 80s box I got back there to the human body. I said ass, my bad. I'm trying to cut down on the cussing. I know it. Some folks take offense to it, so I'm going to respect everybody out there and continue to be real, but be real and respectful for everybody across the stream. But anyway, heat applied to anything will just break it down, even more so in electronics and especially in computers. So this is no different. So keep that in mind. Keep that in mind that the M17 has its drawbacks, but at the end of the day, it stays cooler. Now on to my conclusion. Let's talk about the size first, and this is probably cliche, right? In my opinion, and these are all my opinions. Your opinions may be different. If you travel a lot and don't want to be lugging this big heavy thing around, get the 15-inch, whether it's the R3 or the R4. They're both the same. They both look exactly the same, and that's why I'm comparing these two. I don't think I said that at the beginning. I'm comparing these two, the R3 and the R4, because even if you get the M15R4, it's going to look and perform pretty much the same as this, with the exception of the temps. Anyway, if you don't want to be lugging this thing around, get the 15-inch. If you're at home 80+% of the time, you'll absolutely love the M17. Now, in my opinion, I will not get the 17-inch at 1080p though. So I don't care if it's 300 or 300 hertz. I don't care if it's 1,000 hertz, right? I'm spoiled looking at these screens. I'm spoiled for good. For good. I'm just going to be real with y'all. I'm spoiled for good. These screens are too crispy and too great. And anytime I open up a laptop that's 1080p, I'll play with it, but I'm probably going to connected to an external 4K monitor or a 1440p monitor. That's me. Again, most of y'all, it makes no sense to get something. I get it. That's you. That's not me. I got my own preferences. You have yours. Anyway, call me spoiled, but playing on the 17-inch display. I went to Best Buy. I played on the 17-inch display version of the last year's version of this, and the 300 nit brightness. The 1080p, what looks like to me blurriness after looking at these screens, I just couldn't do it. I would not pay that $22.49 for that one. It was just, you know, it was dim and my eyes were spoiled, or just completely spoiled from 4K. So you may think differently, right? Especially if you haven't experienced the 4K models, especially this 4K model. I'm telling you, don't do it. Don't do it, because it'll have you thinking, do I really need 300 hertz or could I deal with 60 hertz? Anyway, moving on. Now, if you have no intention of connecting your laptops to an external display, then the M17 provides you enough screen space to cancel that need almost entirely. This thing may look small to you on camera, but to me, this thing is ginormous. It's ginormous. Right, especially after playing with this or having this for about six or 7 months now. I used to think this was big after having a 13-inch MacBook, but geez Louise, man. Next, do you game for long hours? And I said this earlier. If you game for a long time, you don't have a cooling or chill pad or something like that to keep this thing cool, then the M17 may be your best bet for longevity, right? That's the only thing. You want to keep this thing for a long time. You're not like me where you're swapping these things out every 6 months to a year because you're a damn idiot. Hey, it is what it is. Get the M17. If you can contend, again, with those blacks being not deep, but then again, how many other OLED computers do you have out there to compare to? I'm not saying that the blacks on here are terrible, because they're not, and they may look like that, again, because I got that light over there coming in, but it's still a great computer, right? It's still a great computer. And I didn't mention it during this comparison, but if you haven't seen it in my other review, the backlight bleed on this thing, it can be an issue if that bothers you. It doesn't bother me, but if it bothers you, you may want to run a screen test. You can go to YouTube, type in a backlight bleed test, and the screen will go all black, and then you can take it in take it in the bathroom or something where it's dark, and where it's completely dark, and see how much backlight bleed you have. But this one had 3 or 4 spots that had some backlight bleed, right? And it was a little concerning to me, but I said at the end of the day, it didn't really matter. Anyway, I said before that, if you don't have a cooling pad, M17 may be your best bet, because the heat will break this thing down at some point, or the throttling can affect your gaming experience. Now, some folks are going to talk about repasting and underclock, but I like to keep, newsflash, I like to keep my warranties intact. Okay? I like to keep my warranties intact. Now, when it's out of warranty, I'll experiment with this thing just like I do as a kid when I used to break last year's Christmas toys, right? But until this thing is out of warranty, or until I intend to not sell it and use it for, I don't know, parts, or, just because I get bored, I'm not doing anything to void that warranty. At the end of the day, I'm not going to pick a winner, because I believe both of these computers, whether you get the R3 or the R4 in either version, are great in their own right. So it's a win-win. And I say that at the beginning. I'm not picking between these two. It's a win-win. I love both screens. The keyboards are exactly the same, except you get the number pad here. I love the way it looks. Keyboard lighting and keyboard is the best in the business. I said about it in the GE66 video, I think I did, in my M17, also in my M17 review. These RGB keyboard lights compared to the GE66s and the GS66s, last year's and this year's version, they just look like cheap Christmas lights. I'm not gonna I'm not gonna even lie to you. I'm gonna be completely honest. I got these two computers sitting by the window, and you can still see the backlight. When I had the GE66 sitting in the same spot with the same light coming in, I can barely see the backlights on the keys. Now, I know what you're saying. Well, it's not dark, as it's made for dark. I get it, but I don't know. I like bright keys. And sometimes when you turn these things off, I can barely see them. I'm so used to seeing them. And plus, I want to show off, even in the daytime. That's just me. And that's my conclusion. But I got one other thing to add. Purchasing these two. I've already gave y'all a few tips and hints about purchasing. In my opinion, never go online, put it in the cart, and then hit purchase. Always chat them up or call them up to try to get some kind of discount, because you will. I don't think I've had one person hit me up and say, well, they refuse to give me a discount. Everybody has gotten a discount. Everybody, including myself. This time, the last time I had a Dark Side of the Moon one, I've always gotten a discount. Anyway, at the time of this writing, there were only 5 M15s or M17s that had at least a 2070 Super or better with the OLED or UHD or 4K LCD display, right? And I'm saying this about the Dell's outlet store. Now, if you haven't been to the Dell's outlet store yet, you may want to visit that if you're thinking about getting last year's version, right? And if you can't find it, because I don't think I found it straight up on their website. I just went to Google, typed in Dell refurbished, and it was the first link that came up, right? So there were 5 M15 and M17s that had at least the 2070 Super or better with the 4K displays, and the price range was between $2,200 and $3,100 for refurbished, right? Or something that I would not buy, scratch and dent. I would not buy a scratch and dent one. So now you need to ask yourself, are you really saving money by getting last year's model, right? Only if you're getting these builds. Now, if you don't want the OLED or the UHD or the 4K display or the 4K LCD display, then there are plenty. Even brand new ones start at $1,300 with a 2060 in it. You know, but at the end of the day, you get what you pay for. So if you're playing Fortnite and Minecraft and all that, and none of the AAA games, by all means, 1300. You would, if you put a 1300 Alienware M15 next to this one, whether it's R3, R4, it's going to look exactly the same. So you're going to get the same kudos or same praise from your friends, if that's what you're trying to do, as if you had one of these computers. You know, but as you heard me before, I like to play AAA games. Those are all I play. So I'm staying away from, one, the 6-core ones, and two, anything with a 2070 Super or 2070 or less. It has to be 2070 Super or higher, whether it's 2080 Super, and even though it's on a deep sale, 2080 Super Max Q. So my only recommendations while shopping for those is to stick to the 8-core processors, because there's plenty 6-core processors. 6-core processor versions of these laptops in Dell's refurbished outlet store. Plenty. But you can go to the top and filter it out and then find the ones with 8 cores and then make your decision. But the prices are high. And is it really worth not adding the extra few hundred to get the latest and greatest model? I'll leave that decision in your hands. Anyway, that's all I have. So if you have any more questions about these, hit me up in the comments. I'll try to respond when I can, because at the end of the day, I do like interacting with y'all. To be honest, I did not think that I was going to continue to get subscribers. I was making a joke about it at work one day when I posted my first video, and I only had 4 subscribers, and I was walking around just joking with my chest out saying, "Hey, I got 4 subscribers." Now it's getting out of hand in a good way. And I appreciate that. And I'm trying to do things to make the channel better. I do accept feedback, and I do accept, you know, if you call me out, but don't, if you call me out and you're wrong, I'm going to put you on blast. Just know that, right? But I enjoy people calling me out because it makes me learn at the end of the day. I'm a grown man. So there's nothing wrong with learning something every day. So if somebody jumps in DMs or in the comments saying, "Hey, I think you missed this," I'm going to look at it and I'm going to look it up. And if I need to correct myself, I'll correct myself like I did when I was talking about the GE66. Now, I won't get all sentimental with y'all, but I do enjoy doing this now. And now that the audience is expanding, I'm enjoying it even more, especially, and I said it before, because I get to buy more stuff. I get to buy more stuff. And you guys motivate me to do that, and I appreciate it. So if you like the video, hit the like. I'm not going to ask anybody to subscribe. I'm going to let you make that decision on your own. Okay? Not begging for anything, because this is just something I like to do. This is not a job or a career to me. Anyway, this is DT 2.0. Thanks for watching. Once again, peace and happy shopping, choosing between these and any other brand new computers on the market. Peace, people.